welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to explore the module 5 of Python for DevOps series. In this module, we'll learn how Python is used for real automation in DevOps. We'll connect to a virtual machine. We'll run system commands, call an API, and take actions automatically. This is exactly how real DevOps automation works in production. So let me copy this particular content to VS Code. We'll create a module. Let's create a module 5 directory. So far we have covered module 4 and you can see the content right here. Like what all things we have covered inside this particular complete Python 0 series. And yeah, in this particular module, we'll cover the automation shell and APIs. Second thing we will cover is running shell commands with subprocess module. Third is scheduling tasks to run it automatically with the help of cron job. Fourth one is working with REST APIs using requests. Fifth one is parsing and handling JSON data. And sixth one is project. So far, we have already covered this parsing and handling JSON data. So we'll remove it from this particular chapter. We'll cover the project to create an automation script that pulls data from API and triggers system-based tasks. So let's start with the first concept of this particular model, which is automation concepts for DevOps. So let's create a script automation demo.py. Let's save this script. So what do you mean by automation? So first thing, automation means doing tasks automatically without manual effort. In DevOps, automation helps us save time, reduce human errors, and run systems reliably. Normal automation flow looks like this. So first we collect data. Next thing is we analyze that data. And third thing is we take some action on that particular data. And fourth thing is we log all stuff for debugging and tracking purpose. So in this model, Python will act as a controller that talks to servers and APIs. So before we write any kind of like script, so in order to perform the automation task, we need some kind of like Linux operating system. And currently I'm working on Windows operating system. And in order to create Linux VMs in complete Linux course, there's a prerequisite section. And there you can find this particular document, create the VMs using background. So here you can download all this stuff like background, VirtualBox, VS Code. For now, I'll follow this document in order to create the VM. So I've created a background file. I've just copied this content right here, which will create a Ubuntu VMs. And let's initiate a background project here. This will download all the plugins required for creating the VMs using background. So yeah, so this particular vagrant init will create this dot vagrant directory, which will initialize this project and it will download all the required plugins. Then vagrant file will store the information about your VMs. So I'll copy paste this configuration given here and let's start the VM. So the VM has been created using vagrant. So let's try to list the VM. So background box, this will list the VMs available, and here you can see the VM has got created. So let's try to SSH to this VM background SSH. The username is background, password is background. Okay, sudo -i. Okay, so here we have successfully logged into this particular VM, and we'll try to perform all the operations on this particular VM with the help of Python. So in this automation demo, we'll try to use Python to log in into Linux VM. We'll do this using SSH. SSH stands for secure shell and SSH is the way in order to connect to the Linux VM. So in real DevOps jobs, this is used to manage servers automatically. And in order to connect to the Linux VMs, we need SSH. And let me exit from this particular Linux VM. And yeah, so in Python, you want to work with SSH, you need some libraries. Those libraries, the library is named as Paramico. So you need to install Paramico. So if we install Paramico, you need to install Paramico here. and you also need to install requests for API request. So let's try to install these libraries. And yeah, we have successfully installed Paramco and request libraries. Now let's try to log in to this particular VM which we have created just now. So we have to import Paramco library first thing. Then the VM IP is required in order to access to that particular VM. So the IP is one, we'll use the localhost IP, and the port on which it connects is 2222. So we have done the port forwarding, and SH by default SH listens on port 22, and we have forwarded that particular port on this 2222 for this particular host. So this host can access this the Linux VM created. This is called as port forwarding. Okay, so this is the VM IP. The username and password here is Vagrant. So we'll store the username and password. Okay. Now, in order to start the SSH connection, you need to create SSH object of SSH client method in Paramco. So this Paramco does provide SSH client method. You need to create object of that method, which is named as SSH. We'll set few parameters, like we'll set host key policy as auto policy. So we'll add Paramco auto add policy. The host keys acts like a cache for SSH, and then we'll try to connect to the VM using connect command. Here you need to provide the host name, then username as username, and password as password. Okay. So here you can provide the port as well, and from this IP I'll remove the port. So port is 2222. Okay. And with this method, it will connect to this particular VM, and yeah, will print the message right here saying successfully connected to VM. Let's try to execute this code automation demo.py. Sorry, demo.py. And here we have successfully logged into the VM. So this particular code connects to the virtual machine securely using SSH. Now we can run any command on Linux server using Python. So yeah, after logging in, we usually check system health check like disk usage or CPU usage. So in order to run commands, we need to use exec command method of sh. So sh exec command will run the commands on Linux VM, and this particular exec command returns three objects. Those are standard input, standard output, and standard error. It returns file which represents this std in, std out, and std error object. And this each object stores this specific information, like std in stores input information, std out stores output information, and std error stores error specific information. Now the next thing is this information is not human readable. So you need to decode this particular information in order to print on console. So let me print output here. So in order to print this output, you need to code this object. So first thing is you need to read this object and decode this object. Similarly, you can do this for std error. So error is equal to std error dot read dot decode. So similar way you can do this for std in, but it is not required as we are not passing any as we are passing only this command, so it will print this command as only. But if you want, let me do this for input as dot read dot before. So we have taken the object of whatever it has written, the whatever the exec command returns is stored inside these three objects, and these three objects have been decoded and stored inside this variable. Now the next thing is, if there's any error, we'll print the error message here, else we'll print the disk message. So let's execute this script. Also, let me print the input as well. So let me, sorry, let me, let me provide input here. Input, input, disk usage is the, and let's execute this command. And it says file is not open for reading. Okay. So input is throwing the error. So we'll remove this input. We'll remove this input statement from this particular script. Let's execute the command. Let's execute the script once again. And here you can see the disk usage. Now let me give the wrong command here, dff, and let's see the output. So here you can see both the things we have tried. It is giving input as well as sorry, it is showing error as well as the output of command. If you want to check uptime of system, you can do that using uptime hyphen p. So this will return the uptime of system Linux VM, and this way you can perform the different kind of like automation. So here we have seen this. So here the fundamental of automation is to collect data, analyze, and perform some actions. So here we have successfully collected the data from the system. Now we have to analyze and perform some action. So here you can see the output of disk usage. And yeah, if you want to check what all systems are above 40%, then the first thing for this kind of like automation is to collect data, perform perform the analysis that on that collected data. So collection of data is nothing but the disk usage for all the mount points. Then analysis, what we want to analyze is if the mount point utilization is greater than 40%, then what action we want to perform? We want to generate the alert. So here we will do the same thing. Now you have to capture this data. You need to perform some automation, and you need to print what all mount points are above 40%. So here only one mount point is there which is above 40%. Your automation script should generate only this mount point saying the slash background mount point is using more than 40% of disk space. So this kind of like automation is very common in monitoring and automation script. So I'll let you guys perform this automation, and if you have any doubts during the automation of this particular task, do let me know, and I will prepare a dedicated video for this. So with this, we have completed the automation concepts for DevOps. Next thing is shell commands with subprocess. So I think we have done this as well. We have run the shell commands here using Paramiko library, and we have used exec command in order to run different commands on Linux operating system or Linux VM basically. Third thing is scheduling tasks and working with REST APIs. As a DevOps engineer, you will mostly work on REST APIs, and if you get more knowledge in working with REST APIs, then it will be beneficial for you. Let's create a script, REST API demo.ui, and let's save the script. So DevOps automation often depends on API data. Now we'll call an API and parse the JSON response. So we'll use JSON placeholder website in order to work with APIs. This website does provide ready-made APIs for testing and prototyping. So yeah, We'll use this particular API. And in order to work with API calls or web, you need to import requests module. First thing you need to define is URL. So URL, we have copied this API endpoint from this JSON placeholder website. We'll try to process this URL first. So in order to process any URL, you need to use a request.get method, and you need to provide URL to this method, and this will process this particular URL and it will return the response. We will store the response in this particular variable. If the response status code is equal to 200, which means successful, then we want to process that response. This will return the response in the form of JSON, and let's print this response. Response is nothing but this data. If there's any error while processing that URL, then we can print it as API call failure. Okay, so let's try to execute this code. Python REST API demo.py, and here you can see the API response has been written successfully. If you try to run this script, here you can see it is returning the same thing. User ID is 1, ID is 1, title is something, and completed as false. So same thing it has written here. So this way you can work with APIs, and these are the important methods like request. .get method will process your URL. Then you need to check the return response with the help of if else block. And if the status code, HTTP status code of that response is 200, which means the URL has been successfully processed. And we have basically formatted that particular response in the form of JSON and stored it inside data variable, and we have just printed that variable. If you give something else here, then it will fail and it will, yeah, I think, yeah, let's give some faulty URL. So to do one, and let's try to call this URL. So here you can see API call is failed because this URL does not exist. And yeah, this way you can explore the REST APIs for your use case. This API basically returns data in JSON format. Python converts it into a dictionary so we can easily read values. Now, in order to perform some decision making based on this API data, automation is not useful without decision making. So we will take action based on this API response. Okay. So based on this completed status, you need to perform some actions. Okay. So if data completed is false, what we want is print. We'll do some actions based on the status of this completed. So task is not complete, triggering action. Okay. Else task is completed, no action required. So here in this particular if block, if the condition is met, automation should trigger an action. Now we'll restart the service on the VM. So yeah, so task is not completed, triggering action. So we'll run a command to restart a cron service. So for we automate stuff, we will try to run the command manually. The command to login is background ssh, and yeah, we'll get logged into our Linux VM. Okay, service cron status is the command to check the status of cron service, and here cron is in running state. If you want to restart this service, the command is service cron restart, and in order to check the status, the command is cron service cron status. So we'll try to perform this same action with the help of REST API. So from this syllabus, so far we have covered all these sections. starting from automation. Then we have ran the shell commands on Linux VM using Paramco model. And yeah, we have worked with REST APIs, and we'll cover the scheduling task using cron in our project. So far we have completed the 4 points of this particular model. Now we'll be starting with our automation script that pulls data from API and triggers system task. So let's create a project called as automation script for pulling the data. So first thing we'll do is we'll define some functions, login to VM. So this function will take care of logging to VM, and yeah, here we'll define all these things like VM IP and stuff. So VM IP username and stuff is written over here. So this particular function will take care of logging to the uh, VM. Okay. So yeah, let's call this dev this login to VM function, login to VM, and let's try to execute this code. So while performing any kind of like automation, you can do step-by-step implementation of script. So first thing we are doing is login to VM. We are implementing login to VM function, which will log into this particular VM, and we'll test this code now itself. API caller.py. So here we have successfully logged into our VM. The next thing we will be doing is executing the command. So for executing the command, we'll define some other function. So function that we will define is run commands, and this will take command as the argument, and whatever it like output it returns will return that particular output. Okay. So okay. So here we have created two variables as well. So okay, first thing first, let's decode the variables and return those variables. Here I'm not interested in, okay, so let's return the output and error. Okay, and here I'll output error equals run commands, and here I'll pass the command. So I'll take command from, so command here is, okay, let's use this code as well. So this is the code for REST API. Let's use this code as well. So first thing, we'll write our problem statement. So problem statement is given here. We want to create automation script that pulls data from API and triggers system task. So for system task, we have created these two functions, login to VM and run commands. These both the functions are working. Now we need to create script that pulls data from API. So for pulling the data, this is the code. So what I will do is I will just copy paste this data, or let me define here a function def run API. Okay, and let's let's let the function take care of this particular program execution. So if I run Python REST API dot REST API demo.py, then yeah, it is working as expected. Now what I will do here is I will return the status code as well. So let's return status code as well. So yeah, so this particular script is returning status code as well, and whatever status code is there, it will, based on that we can trigger the actions. So similar code we can write in the API caller. So yeah, div API caller. So run API will receive. So we'll pass argument to this run API function, and we'll define URL here, URL variable, and this will pass it to the run API function, and here we'll print the data. Okay, so this looks okay. So we have just restructured data in the method. So earlier this API demonstration code or API example code was written without definition. We have written we have just we have just extracted all the code. We have just restructured all the code inside this run API function or method, and we are calling this run API method passing the URL. And what this run API is returning is it is returning status code. So if we print the run API here, it will print the status code for this particular API, which is 200. So it is printing the output as well as status code. Now API caller, we need to pull data from API. So now this REST API demo function is there, and we'll call this model. We'll call this function REST API name function, and we'll pass REST API a URL. So yeah, so we'll try to use different URL this time. So yeah, we'll try to use this URL. Okay, let's try to use this URL. So and we'll call this function an API, passing this variable, and let's see what output prints. So Python API folder.py. Okay, so it is unable to import this. So I think we have done. Okay, so here instead of hyphen, you need to use the underscore, and this will import this particular REST API demo. So let's rename this file to make use of underscore, and yeah. So here you can see the REST API demo is changed with underscore, and we'll do the same for automation demo. Okay, so we are importing REST API demo code inside API caller, and we'll be calling API caller method of REST API demo here, and we'll be passing this URL to this API caller. So we'll be defining URL right here, and yeah, this time we are passing different URL and API caller. Okay, API caller. Okay, so API caller is the local method of this API caller code, and we are passing this URL to this run API method of run API demo. Okay, let's try to run this code API caller. So print. Okay, so the import statement is wrong here. So from REST API demo import, we want to import the method run API. Okay, and we are calling this run API passing the URL. Okay, so this is the correct way of importing the method. Okay, run API URL name URL is not defined. URL is not defined in REST API demo. Name URL is not defined. Okay. So this need to be commented out. We are just calling this as a wrapper. So this run API basically returns the status code, and yeah. So what you can do is you can take the status code in variable named as the status code, and based on this status code, if status code was equals to 100, which means successful, what we want to restart the cron service. So the command to restart the cron service is service cron restart, and we will be using run commands method pass the to run the commands basically. And before we run any command, we want to make sure that we log into VM. So login to VM. So login to VM should get called from run command. Yeah, here we will run login to VM function, and login to VM should basically return the object. Okay, should return the SH, and yeah, login to VM SH is equal to this one. Okay. So this login to VM will return the SH client object, and we'll store that SH client object inside SH. And same object SH client object is used to execute different commands. Now the command here is argument for this run commands, and we are passing this command service command restart command here. Here we can read statement like we are running command. Okay, so this command will run on the VM. So here command this message will get printed before running the command, and this will run the command. Whatever output is there, it will stored inside this output and error variables, and yeah, that's all. So if status is run commands, we'll call the run commands. Run commands basically returns output and error, and these are decoded variables basically. So we can simply print out here. So output is okay. Else API call fail. So I think we are pretty much done with the automation here. The automation script tells that pulls data from API. So we here first thing we will be doing is we will be calling API. So let's try to do that. API caller, we will first calling API, pulls data from API and trigger system task. If the API call is successful, then we are restarting cron, and we are calling this run commands method. Run commands in turn calling login to VM method, and yeah. So based on this status code, if the if the status is successful, API call is successful, then we are restarting the cron. If not, then we are just printing the message saying that API call is failed. Let's run the command, or let's run the code. API call is successful here. We have successfully connected to VM. We are running the service, and the output is not printed yet. So let's check why the output is not printed. Let's debug this code further. So what we can do is we can simply call this method here, and instead of returning the status, let's just print the status right here. So output of command is output. Okay, we are simply printing the output right here. So let's try to run the code. It's still not printing the output. So let me debug this code and get back to you.
2,000 years later.
So we have successfully fixed the error, and the error was a simple sudo was missing in the command, which was causing the error. If we try to rerun this same code, it will run. The only miss was command was not added with sudo, and in order to run these commands like service restart and on, you need sudo access. So you need to provide sudo before running the command. That was the main error, and it is fixed now. If we try to rerun the same code, then yeah, here you can see will post the data as per as mentioned in this in the problem statement. The automation script should pull the data. So it is pulling the data from the website, from the API, given API, and it trigger the system task. And based on this particular data, it should trigger the system task. So here we are passing the command, and it is working as expected. And here you can see, okay, instead of disk, it should be service restart. So let's change service restart here. the message should be services start. So if we rerun the code, we'll get the updated output with services start. And yeah, code is working as expected. Now let's change the URL to something incorrect one. So let's pass double C instead of comments, and let's try to rerun the code. And this time you should get the error. And yeah, this is throwing the error now. So we are pretty much done with module 5, and we have completed all the concept given in this particular syllabus. If you have any queries, doubts regarding any of the given concepts, you can post it in the comment section. If you want any more projects on this particular concepts, please do let us know, and I'll work on your request. And thank you so much for watching this video. See you all in the next one. Take care. Bye.